Hi guys, hope you've got plenty of people watching. Welcome to yet another MonoGame live hangout. This was supposed to be the June one. We missed it by one day, unfortunately. Sorry about that. It's been a bit of a busy month. For those of you following the news, you'll know that Microsoft acquired Xamarin a couple of months ago, and today, believe it or not, is my first official day working for Microsoft. So we've had a lot of stuff to prepare for that. So that's going to be a bit interesting.
Right.
But today we've got Tom Spilman, who's the current coordinator of MonoGame. Tom, if you want to just give you a quick intro.
Sure. Tom Spilman. I'm one of the co-owners of Sickhead Games. We've been doing game development for over 15 years at this point, and we've been running MonoGame for the last couple of years here with Dean and with Steve, and mostly been working on console development lately.
That's pretty cool. So it's always nice to have the coordinator of MonoGame here.
Yeah.
I think we've had all the main players in MonoGame.
I think so
on the live show. So far, which is pretty good. So, but there we go. So, is everything going okay with you, Tom?
Yeah, just hot here. We're in Dallas, so it's hot. Other than that, everything's fine. Lots of projects to do. Very busy.
Excellent. Oh, that's pretty good. So, I mean, what we normally do for the hangouts is we will go through some news and what's going on in the world of MonoGame over the last month or so, and then we're going to go into our topic of choice. And this week we're going to talk about console development, because Tom is the man about to talk to about console development. And then, as always, we're going to open up to questions, Q&A, for people. If you've got questions about MonoGame, doesn't have to be about the topic related that we're talking about. Just any question about MonoGame, just ask away, and we're here to answer your questions. We're doing something a little bit new this time around. Normally, we just use the Q&A thing in Google. So you can use that, because I'm keeping an eye on it. But also, we highly recommend that people go and join the Jitter channel. The link is in the event page, so you should be able to see the link to the Jitter channel there. So if you're not in the Jitter channel, just hop in there and chat. That's where the MonoGame community kind of hangs out live, as it were. So just ask questions in there if you have them, and we'll answer them. We'll probably answer them sort of like in about 20 minutes or so, once we've gone through the main topics. So, news. What's been going on in MonoGame this month? Well, from my point of view, there's some really interesting stuff going on at the moment. We've had the SDL2 stuff has been ported in, so that's in the development branch, which is really, really cool. Tom, you've been a bit busy working on a rather tricky sound-based problem, haven't you, the last couple of weeks?
Yeah,
so I saw your PR pop up today.
Yeah.
What's that been about?
Exact. I mean, Exact support's been in XNA for a very long time, and there's quite a few studios that use it. And we've had some support in there for a while, but the support was kind of not as strong as it could have been. There were a lot of little issues with it. So in the last couple of weeks, I did one push a long time ago to kind of get it up and running, and it was pretty good, but it still had a lot of holes. But now we're starting to add in more features. In particular, we added in all of our PC curve features so that you can programmatically control, sound volumes and pitches and that kind of stuff. We've also added in the effect stuff for reverb and the effect stuff for filters, for high pass, low pass filters. That's a PR that just went up today, a couple hours ago, in fact.
Yeah, I did see the PR pop up.
It seems like it's working appropriately, but Exact is hard to test for two reasons. One, it's a complete black box, and it's really, really complex, and there's very little documentation out there. But two, anytime you try to test audio, it's pretty difficult. Audio is like impossible to test. It's the only way to do it is manually and very methodically, and it takes a lot of time. So right now we're kind of just hoping that this first pass and the testing that I've done has gotten it a lot better, and then we'll continue to do some more tests as we go, and make other passes on it and try to improve it. At least in these last two passes, I got in a couple of unit tests to test some basics that we can test that aren't sound related, but just behaviorally. Does it throw these right exceptions? Does it fix these limits? Things like that. So it should be better in general than it was just a month ago.
Okay.
It's just going to get even better as we move on.
That's pretty cool. That must have been quite a difficult task, considering the exact compiled format was never open sourced, was it? It's never been released.
It's a complete black box. There are lots of places in the file that are kind of still unknown. Like, we don't know what these bits do, and we don't know what those bits do. But we always trying to discover them. Like, as people run into features that that they need, and we say, okay, we're going to try to figure out this feature. And then we start digging around in those sections, and it's basically a process of opening up the exact tool, popping in like a very specific value into a field that you're interested in, and then starting to search through the binary data, looking for where that value is popping up
and where it changed in comparison to the previous format.
Yeah, right. And then once you do that, then you kind of can suss out, okay, well, it's this change, but the number doesn't make any sense. So what format is it in? Is it a 7, one of these 10-bit encoded integer things? Is it a 16 bits floating point? Is it some other format? There's a lot of different ways they can be encoded. But between guesswork like that, and then using existing knowledge, like we can look at the existing format of how the other parts that we figured out, like look at that and say, well, if the same coder wrote all this, which probably didn't, but if the same coder wrote this with the same team, how would they have encoded this? Because we know they encoded this like this, so maybe they encoded this way too. So just deduction and just archaeology, basically, trying to figure out, like, dig out the little secrets that it has in its format. But we're getting closer to having it all defined. But
so if I'm the software engineering equivalent of Indiana Jones right now, is that right?
What's that? What's that?
Of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Searching for stuff. Sorry, that's British humor.
Okay. Is that what that was?
Just for people who are watching and are new to Exact, it's an audio tool that was released with XNA. It's a standalone tool that allowed you to apply effects and filters to your sounds. I'm right in saying it's still Windows only, isn't it? We haven't got any kind of processors or anything on Mac.
Well, our implementation runs on all the platforms. Currently, the effects and the filter stuff isn't implemented for OpenAL or anything else like that, which is the next step. But it should be working on everything here pretty quickly, the next couple of weeks, I would think. But as far as the tool, the exact tool, it only runs on Windows. It's never been open sourced. We've talked to Microsoft a couple times about trying to get a hold of that code base and open sourcing it, but they weren't sure that there was any interest. But I'm going to probably push back again and say, like, hey, we really be interested in it. Even though, like, why would I want a 10-year-old code base that's all C++ and custom, for a UI tool? It's like, well, at least we can figure out the formats and what it's actually doing under the hood. So
yeah. And I suppose if they open sourced it, we could port it to something like using ETO forms or something like that to make it cross-platform, and just get it working everywhere. I mean, that's a possibility if they did that. But
yeah, I mean, there's a huge project there if somebody wants to take it on. I mean, I could see it getting better and be expanded past what it was, even though it was really ahead of its time when it came out, and a lot of people were confused by it. I think it could be pushed further and be pretty useful. I mean, as an alternative to something like Fmod Studio, which you could totally use with MonoGame as well. I mean, their extension, their bindings for it, so it can be used instead of Exact, but that's an option.
Okay, cool. So that was obviously one of the main PRs that I've spotted. We also had another one which had to do with Opengl Instancing, which seemed pretty interesting. I think that's been updated today, and I'd like to thank I can't remember the contributor's name, but I'd like to thank him for the hard work he's putting on that, because that was one of those areas where DirectX had the implementation, but OpenGL platforms did not. It's where we could use instance geometry. So you basically, rather than sending lots of models to the GPU over and over again, or the same model over and over again to render it in different places, you send the geometry once and then you just render it in multiple places. That should be available, hopefully, if we can get that pulled in in the next couple of weeks. That should be available on desktop platforms. I'm not too sure about the Android and iOS platforms because they use GLES, and I think only GLES 3 supports instancing. and it's slightly different. So.
Yeah, exactly. The mobile ones are going to have to be different. At least desktops, we're going to get it across all the desktops. Mobile they'll probably need to be a little bit more time spent with somebody that knows the mobile size a little bit better to address that. The person that submitted that was, here's a weird username, JJag. JJag. I think J is for Jesse Jag.
I love GitHub names. I really do. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm just looking in the list here, and there's someone called the Brilliant One.
Oh, really?
Done a documentation fix, but that is such a cool GitHub name. The Brilliant One. Excellent. That's fantastic. Yeah. So I mean, we've got some interesting PRs. We've got quite a few PRs we need to kind of get a handle on at some point. But if you do have a PR up, and be patient. There's only 3 of us, and we do this part-time. So
yeah.
Be patient. We'll try and get to it at some point. And if it's been a while, just give us a ping on the PR itself, and we'll try and sort that out. But, so, I mean, that's the source code side of things. Have you spotted any new games that we should mention that have been released in the last month?
Yeah. There have been a couple of them. I mean, there have been a bunch of PC ones that, it's kind of hard to track which games are because sometimes people don't tell us about them. But the ones that we've noticed, one of the ones that came out on PlayStation 4 here just, I guess it was like 3 weeks ago. It's called ScoreRush.
Okay.
It's like a bullet hell game. And I think we have some video for that, don't we? Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to share your screen or pop a link in?
I have no clue how to do that, so I'll let you do it.
I don't think I can share your screen. So hang on a minute.
Or share your screen with the video, I guess.
Right. So if you pull the I'll share my screen, shall I? I think you sent me the link, didn't you? Yeah. Oh, I'm sharing my screen. There we go.
Now you're really sharing your screen.
Yeah, so everyone can see all this stuff. So which one are we looking at?
Top
ScoreRush. There we go, ScoreRush. Oh, hang on. Can we watch that in YouTube? Because
does it not go bigger than that one? I guess it doesn't do that. That's kind of annoying.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, so it originally shipped on Xbox 360 back in the Xbox Live or Xbox Indie Game channel stuff. And it did really well there. And he's kind of revamped the game, adding some new modes, some new features, and got it shipped on PlayStation 4. And I think he's working on, a patch to add some more stuff to it. And then the plan after that, I think, is to bring it to Xbox One and potentially other platforms. So it's just out, and it's out now on PlayStation 4. You can check it out on the PlayStation Store. Okay,
cool. So I'm going to drop that in the MonoGame chat channel for people to have a look at.
Sure.
At some point. And then you've got another one you sent me here, which is Cryptark.
Another one. Yeah, Cryptark. It hasn't shipped yet. It's just right now it's still in development, but it's coming to PlayStation 4 in the next couple of months. They were showing it at E3 just recently in the Sony booth. So it's kind of like a I guess it's a what would you call it? I guess it's a procedural dungeon kind of game where you're supposed to be like invading these spaceships, these derelict spaceships, and destroying the core and collecting not loot but artifacts and tech, and then spending your money, and like you get paid for stuff that you find. So it's kind of like there's a name for it, but it's escaping me, the style of game it is. But it's pretty neat. It has a lot of really cool lighting effects.
I was going to say it looks like he's got some deferred lighting and stuff going on there. That's very, very nice.
Right, all built in MonoGame and XNA. And this is the same guys that did Apotheon that shipped, I guess, like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, those guys are really, really good.
Yeah, they have some really cool stuff coming down the pipe, and that's
very cool. One. And then you've got this last one that you sent me.
Yeah, Stardew Valley. One is that was just announced just a couple weeks ago. We were right before E3. It's coming to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Wii U and Vita, I think. No, I don't know about that yet, but it was they showed like 2 seconds of it on the in the Microsoft's E3 presentation. So it got shown on the main presentation for just 2 seconds, in a slate of a dozen other indie titles, which is good to see. That they were showing some indie titles on their show, because they really didn't show too many the year before. So it's a little farming simulator.
Yeah, this is a I remember hearing about this. It's the massive hit in the indie scene.
Yeah, huge. Rightly. It's done really well. It's on Steam right now, and should be on consoles here later this year.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely worth keeping an eye out for.
Also, it was built with XNA, and then they've been porting to MonoGame.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And there's another one that you mentioned called
Redungeon.
Redungeon.
Yeah, I just saw this the other day. I saw some video of it a long time ago on Twitter, and I went back to check and see what was going on with it, and found out that it just shipped like a couple days before. So this just shipped on Google, on Android, and on the iPhone store. It's just like it's an infinite runner, but it's kind of like you're running through a dungeon, and you're dodging traps and puzzles and collecting coins and upgrading your dude, and it's a pretty neat little concept. I played it for a little while the other day. It's really nice presentation. It looks really good. Yeah, it's definitely something worth checking out. It's on the store right now.
So Everminds have done that.
Yeah. So we covered
Anyminds, sorry.
Anyminds, yeah.
Oh, okay, that is pretty good. The only thing I don't like about that is it's not on Windows Phone, and as a Windows Phone user, if it's done in MonoGame, come on, guys. Even if it's just for me, that'll be fine.
Can they just send you the code and
just send me the code? I'll get it on Windows Phone for you.
Right. I'm sure they're going to try to go wide now that they've gotten on those platforms. But yeah, it's a pretty neat little game. It's free to play. You can go pick it up. Free to play with ads and nags and stuff. Typical mobile game stuff.
If they ported that to Windows 10 UWP,
they
everywhere. Could get on the Xbox One, Windows 10, and the Windows Phone all at the same time.
They could.
That would be awesome.
I think you should tweet at them. And say, hey, I'll make you a deal.
I'll make you a deal. All of that just so I can play it on my phone.
Yeah,
I could just go out and buy an Android device, but no.
Yeah, take the same money and invest it into porting the game for them.
Definitely. Okay,
so that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's quite a few little games we've got.
Hopefully we can do more of these every month. I'm going to start, gathering more of them for next month.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, so on to the topic at hand. You mentioned Stardew Valley's coming to Xbox One and PS4 and PS Vita. I know there's probably a lot of people out there that are obviously looking into MonoGame stuff. How do you get started targeting those platforms, really?
Right.
From an indie gamer point of view or a hobbyist, what's kind of the best route, do you think?
I mean, the best route to begin with from the very beginning is, your best route to begin with is start on your PC and build yourself a fun prototype or game, a core game that you think, like, this is what I want to bring to these platforms. Because most of the time, most of the, like, Sony and Microsoft most likely won't just hand off some dev kits and let you go wild unless you have something to show them, like, this is what I want to build. I mean, even though they're very indie friendly, they're not like, oh, here's some dev kits, do whatever you want, kind of thing. They kind of want to see that you're actually building something. There's still a limited supply of dev kits and things like that. Okay. So the first step is always just have a game that, that you can show them and say, hey, this is what I want to bring to the platform. As long as it's interesting and looks fun and, they have the bandwidth, they'll look like, great, let's fill out some paperwork and let's get you on the program. And Microsoft and Sony have both been really great about it.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be a fully fledged game, though. It can be just even if it's just the first,
just a
minimum viable product, the first prototype.
Right. Yeah, it's not supposed to be. It doesn't have to be a finished game. If it's a finished game, even better. It just means it's easier for you, right? But you can basically, with MonoGame, you can basically develop completely on the desktop and be prepared to be able to move onto console later, as long as you do reasonable things. As long as you're not like. Generating garbage like crazy every frame and things like that are just going to slow things down on console. But in general, yeah, you develop on your PC, get something minimum viable product, and then you can Microsoft has the ID at Xbox program, and Sony has, they don't have this particular program, but they have indie support there. You contact the Sony representatives, and I'll try to pull a URL for both those things.
Okay.
For the show, I'll write myself a little note, get URLs for that.
Just while you're doing that, just a reminder for people watching, we're in the Jitter channel. On the event page in the description, there's a link to the Jitter channel. That's where we're going to take questions today. If you do put it in the Q&A part of the Hangout, I'll keep an eye on that as well. We'll do questions and answers later. So we'll post any links and URLs in the Jitter channel, and we'll also post them on the event page once this broadcast has ended.
So once you get so after you have a little minimum viable product, you can basically contact Microsoft or Sony through their different programs and like say, hey, I want to develop for your console. They're both all pretty generous about giving you dev kits and test kits in order to develop your game, and giving you some support to get started. Once you're there, I mean, you tell them like, hey, I'm using MonoGame, and at that point they will get you in touch with me usually, and I usually give you access to a private GitHub repo basically that has the version of MonoGame for that platform, for PlayStation 4 or Xbox One or Vita, or just so that you have that repo access. And then at that point, on each of those, they're all a little bit different how they're set up, mostly because they've been set up at different times. But I'm kind of unifying them all into a common path of how things will work. But yeah, that's basically the process. Once you're in the program, they'll get you on they'll put you the right, email address or URL to access the private repos. And once you get access to it, then you're basically in the same position as you are on the PC. You have a repo, you build, you link against the thing, you deploy to the console, and things are working.
Okay.
So it's a similar-ish kind of process. If you've done mobile development, it's not crazy different from that, the basic process, right? You develop on your PC, and then when you get to a certain point, you say, I want to deploy it to the device, and you deploy it to the device. The only difference with consoles is you don't have an emulator per se that you can run on your local PC. But you basically, once you set the different consoles up, you just basically deploy to them like you would deploy to your mobile phone if you're doing mobile development. So it's not too different from that perspective.
Okay, I've got a quick question. You mentioned that the source code for the MonoGame ports for say the PS4 and the Xbox One, they're private. Could you give us an explanation of why that's the case?
They're private mostly because they contain proprietary information for those platforms. The reason those SDKs are not open, they're as regular SDKs are just not open to anybody, is because they have proprietary information about how their low-level graphics work and how their low-level systems work, and that's information they just don't want to share publicly with people for lots of different reasons. There's also sometimes information in there about stuff that hasn't been announced publicly. So all that stuff requires you to sign non-disclosure agreements with Sony or Microsoft before you have access to any of that stuff. And that includes the parts of MonoGame that are private, that are just for those platforms. And for those things, it's really just the low-level platform stuff that's private. The rest of MonoGame, the rest of it is still using the normal public MonoGame for all the common code, which is like the vast majority of it. It's just a little bit of the stuff at the low level that you really can't share publicly. So that's why that's all in a private repo.
So if we're mapping that to the structure that I know of the public MonoGame repo, we tend to have folders. So we've got an Android folder, and we've got a Mac OS folder, and we've got an SDL2 folder. Those contain the platform-specific parts for those platforms. I'd imagine that it's the same kind of structure in the private repo. So you literally just got those little small bits that are for that platform, but then everything else is shared. So, it's similar. Yeah, it's similar to that. It's not exactly like that. Again, we're evolving how we're doing it a little bit, because the first attempt of it, like a private fork, didn't really work out very well. But after the private fork try, we're doing kind of this parallel stuff. We've been using this tool called Proto Build that kind of builds our projects and stuff. Well, the Proto Build developer, they were nice enough to help out and fix it so that we can basically set it up where you can have
separate subfolders that contain code that can then be hooked into the main project, so that you could basically put all the Xbox One code in a separate folder altogether, and you could check that out as a separate checkout. And when you run Proto Build, it'll pull it in and generate one project that has all the Xbox One stuff gathered together with the public stuff. So you're really kind of using the public repo and the private repo that just has the Xbox One or the Vita stuff or the PlayStation 4 stuff, and kind of combine it all together. So we're trying. This is just something new we're kind of figuring out and developing, just to make it easier to be able to maintain and keep things up to date. Because if not, things get too far behind. It becomes too difficult to juggle a bunch of different branches that are all copies of each other, basically, and try them all in sync. So this at least brings in a public repo a couple things that mention PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and stuff like that. They don't have any details there, but just mention them because it's all using the same code base. So it's something we've been trying to work on to just make it a smoother process to develop and make sure everybody's on the latest stuff.
Okay, that's cool. One of the things, obviously, going into a technical side of things, I know Xbox One they've announced. We talked about it either last month or the month before.
I think it was GDC.
Yeah, we talked about that you can now deploy UWP apps to the Xbox One, and they have a tool to do that. I think we mentioned you don't need to be a part of the ID program to deploy to your own home console, but if you want to publish a game, you do. Now, from what I gather about the stuff that you kind of work on, you're actually deploying to the game side of the Xbox One console, and the PS4. Obviously, what kind of technologies are being used on the Xbox One, the PS4, and the Vita to get MonoGame apps on there? Because I know the Mono runtime doesn't run on the Xbox One, for example. Is that on the PS4? Is it on the Vita? How is that all working? What kind of process?
So first, you mentioned the Xbox One be able to deploy UWP apps. So that's a completely separate thing, and it's kind of nice that we support two different paths on Xbox One. We support the UWP path, which lets you write a Windows Universal Windows app, or a Universal Windows Platform application that basically targets all Windows 10 devices, including Xbox One. And Microsoft released the tools to be able to deploy to the Xbox One with that. The deal with that, though, is it has some limited access to hardware resources like video memory and graphics memory and base CPU, how much CPU is devoted to your app. It's kind of like a little bit more sandboxed, and there's some certain things you don't have access to. But it seems to have, at least from my initial testing, it seems like it performs at least as good as the Xbox 360, the old Xbox 360 does, as far as the old Xbox Live Xbox Indie Game program.
So if you've got an existing Xbox 360 game that's XNA based, that should be good enough. What you're saying,
it should be good enough. You might have to tweak it some. Again, it's there. This thing is still in beta. So, it's actually not in beta. Microsoft says it's an alpha. Technically, it's a really, really early version of it, but it's going to get better, and it's running the full .NET stack on there, and it seems to be working really well at this point. But it's going to just get better as they finalize it. I think they said they were going to finalize it in December or something.
Okay.
So that's one path, and that could be the path that you use if your game fits, works fine under that path. Great, simple, it works, and you can get on the Xbox Live. You can get on the ID at Xbox program with that, and you could ship a game using UWP on Xbox One as long as you're on the ID and Xbox program. So that's totally, doable. The other side is the Xbox has the native side, or the what they call the game partition on the Xbox, which is the side that's basically where all the AAA games run, and all the games are using the full resources of the device. So that side is the thing that was announced at GDC, basically. That's basically running native code on the console, full access to everything. That side uses a technology that we developed to since there was no C# available for the native side of Xbox One, which sounds weird because why would Microsoft have it available? Because they're building a console targeting AAA games, not indie games to begin with. Eventually they'll have C# on that side, but they currently don't. And they're currently, the version of Mono, I think they're still in development somewhere, but it's not ready for that yet, as far as I know. So at the time we had to start this work, we ended up a couple of years ago starting writing a cross compiler or a transpiler that takes your C# IL code and converts it into C++ for you, and you builds it and runs it on the device so that you don't have to go and edit it or anything. It's just like you pass in your executable, it converts it into C++ code, you build that code and it runs on the device. So that technology is what we've been building over the last year, here and there on different projects. And you've already used that technology to ship Axiom Verge on Vita and Towerfall on Vita.
Oh, okay.
And soon be used on Axiom Verge on Xbox One and a bunch of other little titles that are coming out. And it's basically, it's still pretty early, but we're going to open source it completely once we get to a little bit more of a stable position with it. But the idea is that that'll make it available. Like if there isn't a Microsoft.NET runtime available for their platform, or there isn't a Mono runtime for your platform, then at least this is your fallback to, okay, I have no other choices. This is my only choice left, but it will work because it's designed to basically target, the minimum viable C++ language, so no high-level features or anything. So it basically can run anywhere where you have a C++ compiler. That's the goal,
Just out of curiosity, how much tweaking on the C++ side do you have to do? I mean, I'm a C# programmer. I know C++. I used to use it. I hate using it. How much tweaking do you? If you're going to go down that route, how much tweaking do you have to do to the C++? Because if it's more than one line,
yeah. Well, I mean,
crazy.
I am a C++ programmer from a long time ago, and I switched over to C# almost full time, maybe 6-7 years ago. And doing this project, I had to live in both worlds for a while. So I learned to appreciate C# very, very much and hate C++ even more. But it is a means to an end, and how much do you need to tweak? Zero. You don't need to tweak anything. The idea is it's 100% automated. It 100% converts it. You don't have to go edit C++ code or change C++ code. It's supposed to be it's really supposed to replace the AOT process, right? Like a normal, for shipping on iOS, right? You use a C# compiler to compile from C# to IL, and then it runs through Mono's AOT process to convert the IL into native code. Yeah. Well, we're using the C++ language as kind of like an intermediate language to the assembler in a way. Whereas Mono's AOT reads IL and converts it into native code directly. We read IL, convert it into C++ code, run it through a C++ compiler, and now we have our AOT assembly, basically. The benefit of that is that in particular with consoles, is console vendors spend a good amount of time optimizing. First, they spend a good amount of time building hardware that's specialized for their purpose, right? They're specialized for games, for transforms, for graphics, for those things. So they have hardware that's already specialized for that. And then because of that, they have to specialize their compilers to target that hardware. So by using their C++ compiler, we automatically get the benefits of their C++ compiler when we cross-compile through it. If we were just going from IL straight to assembly, it might run after, it's difficult to do. We might get it to run, but it's probably not emitting the most optimal code for that platform. And could we figure that out? Yes, we could, but I don't want to spend that time doing that. So I'd rather, by targeting C++, we basically get the best of both worlds. We get an AOT assembly in the end, we get C++ level performance and high performance, and we get, the native optimizations for that platform the console vendor has done in their tooling. This is very similar to Unity's using they have a tool called IL to CPP. It's a very similar concept.
That one.
It's the same sort of concept. Now, both our project and Unity started their project a long time ago. When both of us started that project, the concept of C# being completely open source didn't exist. There's no concept of C# being open source 2 years ago when both of us started those projects. So it's a completely different world than when we started, but I still think it's viable. In fact, not only did Unity do it, we did it. There is at least 2 or 3 other projects out there that I know that are working on it, but some of them seem like they're kind of going away. Some of them are still pushing on. Even Microsoft has one. It's called CoreRT, which it's You can go pick it up on GitHub right now. It's same sort of thing. You pass your executable through a tool, and it outputs C++ code, and you go compile C++ code, and it runs. Now, it's a lot earlier than our stuff, so there's a lot of stuff it doesn't support, but it's a start. But I mean, even Microsoft's experimenting with that same technique.
Yeah.
Because there is some benefit to it. I think all this stemmed, at least from my point of view, the reason we did this was just frustration with getting a C# or getting .NET and C# runtimes on different platforms on this particular consoles, and just seeing things like what really got the idea in my head was back in it's at least 2 years ago. Epic showed Unreal Engine running in a browser using JavaScript. That was what was called. It was the Epic Citadel demo or something running in a Mozilla. Was it Mozilla? Yeah, it was running Mozilla using JavaScript. It was using this Inscription tool to convert from C++ to JavaScript, which was at the time like, wow, that's impressive. They can convert all their C++ code base into JavaScript, and then not only that, but it runs fast.
I think MonoGame has something for converting the C# into JavaScript as well.
Yeah, we do too.
I don't know how up to date it is, but
it's pretty out of date. It's never fully worked, but because no one's really taken the time to go do it. But it's the same technique.
Yeah.
That's really the project I would say that like first inspired me to think about this idea. It's like, that's interesting. Could I do the same thing with C# and C++? And yes, you can for two good reasons. One, C# is very well suited to this. It has an intermediate language. It has a
well-documented intermediate language.
Right, a well-documented intermediate language. It has the runtime is reasonable in size and everything, and it also C# is just easier to work with some of these things. In particular, like of course the tool that we built is all written in C# itself, so it's kind of like C# converting C# into C++ to then compile it to natively to the platform. So it's interesting technology. We're using it on Vita and Xbox One. We're not using it on PlayStation 4 at the moment. We're using Xamarin did a mono runtime for PlayStation 4 2 years ago, and we've been using that, and that works fine. The idea is really not that it has to use one technology or another. As long as there's a C# runtime on the platform, MonoGame will run on there. That's the idea.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, the PS4 mono port. What's happened with the pricing of that? Because I remember I seem to remember prior to Microsoft taking over Xamarin or buying Xamarin, you had to pay a license fee for that. Is that license fee still apply to the PS4 port, or is it all free now, like the mobile stuff?
Right. I honestly do not know. Mostly because I've never had to license it myself. I've helped people with their ports, but their discussions with Xamarin, I haven't gotten involved in that directly. I know that there's some stuff's changed. I'm sure things are different now. Xamarin is still okay. I am not going to say Xamarin is doing it. Microsoft is still providing versions of Mono for PS4 right now at this point. So
okay, well, that's good.
Got another build a couple weeks ago. So I mean, it's not like they've abandoned it or anything else like that. So it's still there. I don't know what the long-term plans are for it, but Microsoft seems to say that, and the Microsoft people I'll talk to have said that nothing is changing in that realm. You might know more about what's happening there and what can be said than I do.
But I don't at the moment. But if I do find out, and I'm allowed to say it, I will say it.
All right.
But, I could be holding back, but I'm not.
There, but generally the pricing has not been a problem. They've always been pretty lenient with Mono for PS4. It's been all about like the high end is like that. I've heard has been like the cost of buying a license for iOS. On the Xamarin tool, so it's not that big a deal in the big scheme of things.
Okay, well,
for a very very small indie, it might be a big deal, but for most people, it's not a big deal at all.
Yeah, that was one of the really nice things about the acquisition was that now that MonoGame is truly free because you don't have to buy the Xamarin license for any of the iOS and Android or Mac platforms. So that was one of the really nice things. You mentioned something earlier, and I don't know whether it was a slip up, but I'm going to call you on it.
Okay.
We were talking about consoles. We were talking about PS Vita. We were talking about PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. But earlier you hinted at the Wii U. Is that using the same tech?
Yes.
Is that in
So,
progress?
Yeah, we can
Can
talk
you talk
about
about
that.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked to Nintendo a bunch of times in the past about getting something working there. It's just nothing's worked out. Like there have been different problems and issues. What happened was, we've talked to Stardew Valley people, and they wanted to get to Wii U, and they wanted to get to Wii U, so they're kind of helping us fund the project in order to get MonoGame on Wii U. Now, it's not a complete port of MonoGame to Wii U. It is a partial port, just serving the needs of Stardew Valley, but it is a partial port. So it's a step towards having a full Wii U support at some point. And we still talk to Nintendo, and we're trying to get something worked out there. We've even talked to them about potentially doing 3DS as well. It's just time and money and projects and funding and desire and all that. If you have an existing title on a platform and really want to get to Wii U or 3DS, talk to us, talk to Nintendo. They're really friendly and want to talk about that stuff, and they have people that want to get there, then it can happen. But they need devs that really want their titles on those platforms, which there are quite a few. Wow. So, but it never hurts to have more.
That's really cool. I remember there was a big media blitz probably about 2 years ago when someone, I don't know who it was, but someone said something to somebody, and then all of a sudden the media went nuts, like, "Oh, MonoGame's coming to the Wii U." It was like, "No, it isn't." But clearly that's happening now. That's nice. Yeah. That's going to be really, really fun.
Oh,
that's good. So you're going to have to deal with the 2 screens and everything, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit. It'll probably end up being like a separate render target or a separate game window, maybe. There'll probably be a separate game window, I think. We're still trying to figure it out. There's some interesting challenges there, but it should be totally viable. If we have it running on a PS Vita, we can pretty much run it just about everywhere else. I mean, the only thing that's more challenging would be 3DS, which is much more memory and CPU constrained device. So that's the really big challenge. If somebody really wants to get their title on that platform, let us know, because it would be a really interesting project to do, and I think it would be there's tons and tons of 3DS users out there, so the right title on that platform, could be really worth.
I have a 3DS. I have a 3DS gathering dust somewhere.
Right.
Around here.
It would be nice if we could get some MonoGames. By the number of units that are out there, I think everybody else has a 3DS out there.
Okay.
So it's happening. It's just taking time. We'll see. There's supposed to be a build. Stardew Valley on Wii U is supposed to be out later this year. So that's when you're gonna start seeing it.
Well, you heard it here, folks. The Wii U's coming. So something to get very, very excited about. Excellent. Right. Well, we're coming towards the end of it because, believe it or not, it's been 40 minutes so far. We've got this habit. It's supposed to be a 30-minute session, and we just keep overrunning every single time. I don't mind that. So we're going to open up to some Q&A at the moment. But before we do that, I just want to shout out to Dominic Louis, who sent me this awesome mug the other week. Thank you, Dominic. MonoGame mug, everybody. We should probably start promoting the fact that you can get stickers and mugs and stuff a bit. Have we got mugs available in the store somewhere? Have we got a store somewhere, Tom?
I do not know.
Yeah,
we've talked about it. We've just never done it.
Yeah, we've talked about it. Okay, quick poll: Do people want a MonoGame mug? Yeah, if you do, leave a comment in the YouTube thing, and we'll start getting those out. And what we'll do is we'll do it so that if you buy a mug, part of the proceeds will go towards funding the project, so we can do stuff like have build servers and things.
Yeah, keep the website running.
The currently Tom pays for everything. Right.
Yeah, well, actually, we've gotten donations are paying for the website at least. So the build servers are running in my office, but other than that,
Yeah, we'd like to thank all the people that have donated over the course of the project. You've all been awesome.
Yeah.
And keep it coming. So we've got some questions. I had a question earlier from, where are you? Bangclash OC _ Twitter. Xamarin Studio 6 seems to be broken in MonoGame. Support on OS X. Any chance of a fix? Well, yes, that is a problem that I'm aware of. And I'm going to hold my hand up. I'm Mr. Xamarin Studio add-in. It's a kind of pet project of mine. Yes, it is broken. I'm aware of it. We had a little bit of a problem. There was an API change between Xamarin Studio 5 and Xamarin Studio 6, and all of the APIs that our add-in was using disappeared completely. Ouch. So
disappeared without a trace. Nobody can find them.
No, they just changed the API completely. It's just like there wasn't even a we're gonna it's sort of like
no depreciation of API,
no
just gone.
Just gone, absolutely gone. To be fair, we were using some. They weren't internal things, but they were quite advanced because we're doing things like injecting MS build targets into the project when you're loading them and messing around with references. We're doing some kind of weird advanced stuff. Anyway, the API has completely changed on us. So it's been a bad month for that to happen because obviously with the acquisition and moving over, it's not very good. So we've got a branch that is available. There's a PR up for it, and I try and post links to the add-in in the alpha channel. So if you can have a look around for that. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get that. I'll get that finished off this weekend. The other thing we're relying on is upgrading the Mac Buildbot because at the moment Xamarin Studio 6 won't install on our Mac Buildbot because the OS is too old. So we need to upgrade that, and then we can start building that one. And the other spanner for that works is the fact that they haven't released Mono Develop for Linux version 6 yet. So I don't know how we're going to deal with that because if we upgrade to Xamarin Studio 6, the add-in we generate won't work on Linux anymore. So I guess the workaround will be they'll have to get it from the internal feed rather than the installer. We might try and figure that out or download it manually as part of the build process. I'll chat with the crazy about that. But yes, so really apologize for the Xamarin Studio 6 stuff. It was a little bit out of our control, but we're working on it. We know about it. We'll get it fixed as soon as we can. So any other questions? That was the only one I saw.
Dom,
we've got 13 people viewing.
Yes, it is.
Any questions? Post it in the Jitter chat or on the Q&A session.
Right. Not a question, but Raining Blob said, great job on the awesome work on the desktop GL. Yeah, that was a pretty big change, supporting SDL2 with the new desktop GL platform, working great on Mac, Linux, and PC, and Raining Blob shipped with it, and Mr. Helmet's game. What is the game? It's our webpage.
Can't remember his name.
Neurovoider. Neurovoider is using it.
Believe it or not, on that subject of the OpenGL bindings, I have a branch where I have stripped out OpenTK for Android and iOS.
Oh, really?
I haven't tested it yet.
So that means that
compiles.
Right. So OpenTK is out, and it's using the OpenGL bindings that we've written directly on iOS and Android.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. I haven't, like I said, I haven't tested it yet. I've got it all stripped out. The code is compiling, and I wanted to give it some tests and stuff because I had to make some tweaks. I had to completely rewrite the Android game view because that's an OpenTK thing. We don't have that anymore, so I've had to use one of the ones I used for Skulls of the Shogun a while back, which is interestingly because that's a faster Android game view because we do all the rendering on a background thread, rather than the marshalling onto the UI thread, which is weird. But that is in progress, which is nice. So hopefully that will happen. And I'm also planning on probably in a separate PR of killing OpenTK on the Mac as well. But then again, I want to kill the Mono Mac port anyway because I don't see the point in it anymore.
With all that
Xamarin,
no, it's open source. See, there's another question. There's another question that somebody asked about, like, what's the pipeline basically from C# to a native assembly on console. So like on Windows, you compile your C# code to IL. It runs when you run the IL. The executable actually contains IL code in it. When you run it, the .NET JIT hooks into it, takes the IL and converts it into native code on the fly and runs it. Right. So that's how it works just in a regular Windows world. On the console, it's a little bit longer, but it's the same sort of thing. where you compile C# using a regular C# compiler, just in fact the Microsoft C# compiler that everything else uses. It gets IL. The IL gets pushed through our converter. The converter then exports out C++ code, and then along with a C++ project, then you fire up the C++ project, hit build, hit deploy, and you have your binary. So it's a very similar process, except this one extra step where basically after running, you basically end up with, like currently how we have it set up is you end up with two windows open. One window open one copy of Visual Studio open that has your C# project in it, and one copy of Visual Studio open that has the C++ version of your C# project in it. And you build one, hit the tool to convert, and the other one updates, and you hit build, and it goes. And the build is minimal. We spend a significant amount of time making sure that when you make one little change, it doesn't rebuild the entire thing. So
that's pretty cool. I was just about to ask that question.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, I changed one line and now I have to wait 20 minutes for the thing to rebuild. I'm like, no, it's not like that. So that would be horrible, and we're trying to avoid that at all costs. But yeah, it's something like that. We're looking to make it more streamlined in the future. Like in theory, we should be able to do all of it behind the scenes. Like you build in C#, and at the end of the build with C#, we should be able to hook in a event at the very end that says, okay, now run the tool, then build the C++ project, get the native assembly, and run it on the device. But there's a lot of pipelining and a lot of stuff under the hood that we have to do to get that all hooked up. So we're not quite there yet. But that's the plan at some point. It's just, we're still trying to get everything hooked up and getting support for the consoles in place and stuff like that. So it's not high priority at the moment, but that's basically the process.
Well, if you end up in MS Build land, which I'm sure you will, do ask me. I've been responsible for the Android MS Build targets for the last year and a half at Xamarin. Right. So I know MS Build well. Yeah, it definitely takes a change, and you have to twist your brain into a weird direction, to make MS Build make sense in your head. Because it's not normally what you would think of as programming, but it totally is. But yeah, it's pretty neat stuff. I have got to the point with MS Build now that I like it, and that means something is very wrong in my head. But I've got to that point now, so I like MS Build. Yeah, when they were going to take MS Build away and replace it with that Project JSON thing, I was like, no.
Yeah, I don't think they were going to replace it with that, but yeah, the Project JSON thing's a mess. Let's see, any other questions?
I don't think we've got any other questions, actually.
Somebody mentioned something like, with XNA, all content goes through the content pipeline. With MonoGame, it seems like you can load a PNG file directly without going through the content pipeline. What's the advantage using the content pipeline in MonoGame? Well, first of all, we've removed, in XNA and MonoGame, you can still call texture from stream and load from a PNG file. We don't recommend it, but you can. And there used to be a hack that we had in there, and I think it was in the 3.5 release, and it's not in the 3.6 release, where you could put PNGs in your content folder, and under the hood, if we didn't find the converted XMB file that the content pipeline generates, we would look for a PNG for your texture and load that instead. But we've since removed that for the 3.6 release, so that's gone. So what the benefit of the pipeline is that you don't have to worry about making sure that your content is optimal for one platform and another. We take care of that. So you just say, here's a texture. I want to make sure it has bitmaps, and I want to make sure it has alpha blending, or not alpha. It's pre-multiplied alpha and a couple other features, and you take care of compiling it to the right format. And that's important, especially when you get a console, where the console formats for compressed textures and things like that are very, very different. And if you're targeting something like Vita, it might be very, very important that you take advantage of those things. So it's definitely worth spending time and using the content pipeline, not working yourself around it. If you work around it with something else, then you're just going to pay for it if you decide to go to console or some other platform where you need to, be a little bit more tight with your content and make sure that it's optimal for the platform. So
we also mentioned a lot in the previous Hangout. We did a little Q&A section on extending the pipeline. So one of the things I covered there was pre-processing your content, so you didn't have to do stuff on the fly. A lot of people, they were trying to get the pixel data from the texture to figure out whether something to build a collision mech, kind of a collision rectangle up, whereas you can pre-process that information with a custom content pipeline extension. and not do it at runtime, do it at build time, which is when you have the time to do it. You don't have the time to do it at runtime normally. So,
Yeah.
content pipeline is really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that issue in particular with the collision data and textures has come up so many times. I still think we need to spend time and add like a built-in feature specifically for the reading back data from textures, because people seem to always seem to want it, and we might as well just add a feature directly that supports that in some way. Just an extension on top of the existing
the problem you have with that is doing it with all the different kind of drivers out there. I remember to get data feature.
No, not reading it back, but I mean making sure like if
it's available.
If you mark a checkbox on your texture saying make sure that this data is available on system memory, as well as a texture, then we could basically save off a.
I think we lost Tom for a second. Oh no, you're back.
Oh, I froze for a second. Sorry. I was going to say, basically, it just stores a separate version of it that's not loaded into video memory, or it keeps a part of it in system memory, so it doesn't have to read it back from the GPU as just a hint, so that it knows that, hey, you need this data, so you might as well just get it.
So it's almost like a export alpha channel or something like that.
Yeah, like something like that.
Maintain alpha channel, something like that.
Yeah.
That's not bad. We should have a chat about that actually, because that's not a bad idea. Because otherwise you have to. The one I did was I had my own texture collision texture type, right, which I had to load, which contained the texture and then a byte array for the data. So
I mean, there are definitely some advantages doing it that way, because you can say, well, how does my collision system work, and build the data specifically how your collision system works, right? If it's all like, if you don't need, semi-transparent data, for your collision, you just need ones and zeros. Is it on or is it off? You can store it as a bit mask and press it a bunch. But if you actually use the transparency for some information or some data, that's a different thing. And this would just be, I think this feature would be more of a, hey, I want to be able to read back my textures fast, and I don't mind wasting some CPU memory to do it.
Okay, so we have another question. Does MonoGame have 100% support for Exact? We talked about that a little bit earlier on. No.
Yeah, not 100%. I mean, it's getting there. We're adding more features to it and getting it more compliant with Microsoft's Exact. It's just a huge task and a huge black box, and no one has had. I mean, really, to get it 100% done would take somebody's time for 2 months, 3 months of just working on it, building a bunch of unit tests, building a bunch of tests that can be repeated and tested against to make sure that you're 100% compatible. And that'd be an awesome project. If somebody's willing to pay me to do it, I'll spend the time doing it. But unfortunately, I have other projects that I have to work on that are paying my bills. So, but it can totally be done. It's just a matter of time. The effort that we just put in should take it. It should be much beyond where it was, in particular with effects and custom PCR channels. That's the big changes that just occurred. So it should be much, much better, but yeah, it's still not 100%. We know that.
Well, it's getting there though. So that's always good. Excellent. Okay. Well, I think we're coming towards the end, unless we have any more questions. For those of you that are watching, if anyone is attending the Develop Conference in Brighton in the UK, on the 12th, 13th and 14th of July. I'm doing a MonoGame presentation there, so I'll be about. I'll probably be one of the few people or the only person wearing a MonoGame t-shirt. So if you want to have a chat or ask questions, just sort of like come up and say hello, introduce yourself. But yeah, so Develop Brighton, middle of July in the UK. Should be quite cool. And I think we'll probably try and do another Hangout later on.
Probably after
I was going to say next month, but it's actually this month.
This month, probably after your Develop Brighton thing. So we'll talk to us about that stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, we can find out. I'm going to try and I'll wander around and see what's good at Develop Brighton. It'll probably be VR, like everything is nowadays.
Yeah. It's a VR report.
There we go. Yeah, and don't forget, people, we've got a challenge. The first person to get the Kinect working in a UWP app on the Xbox One, you free T-shirt.
Is that API even available there? I don't know if it is or it isn't. Is it?
I think it is. It should be.
Okay.
Yes, that is the conference. I
Yeah.
don't know how you pronounce your name. Loz.
Yeah.
Loz Adjab. How do you pronounce that? I've got no idea.
You know, if you're
But
going to have a
yes,
weird
that is
name
the
like
conference.
that, you're just going to have to live with the fact that people are going to pronounce it weird. Lejub. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I do occasionally do talks in the UK. So, but this is the first time we've talked to develop. Normally we ask and they say no, but they want us this time around. So I'll probably have the press asking me about the Wii U now, won't I? Oh, great.
Oh no. How will you deal with all this press?
I don't know. It'll be like one person says, "So,
right.
is it working?" Oh, I don't know. Yeah, there we go.
You just put on the
Right,
dark
okay,
sunglasses
so,
and tell them no cameras, no cameras.
No cameras.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think our 30-minute session turned into an hour.
Is over. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought. Well, it's well over. I think next time we're just going to admit it and say it's an hour.
An hour is a good number.
Yeah, because you know what it is? It's because we don't hang out that much.
Yeah.
So
what's monthly? If you want to do it bi-monthly, maybe we get 30-minute ones.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. Follow us on Twitter. Use our Twitter account.
Yeah.
If you're building games in MonoGame and you have something to show off, tweet about it. Put a hashtag MonoGame on it. Tweet at it at MonoGame Team on Twitter, and we usually retweet it, and people love to see that stuff. Subscribe to us on YouTube. That's important. Our YouTube channel's now at over 1,000 people, so that's awesome. It was only like 12 people like a year or two ago, so we made some progress. So subscribe on there. We're always adding in the latest videos. If you have a video that something you recorded, tweet it at us, and we'll make sure that we add it into the channel so that people can see it.
We do our best to, if you've got a game that you've written in MonoGame and you publish it, let us know and we'll do our best to get the word out there. We've got a Facebook channel, Twitter. Dominic looks after our social media. He'll tweet it everywhere. So and hopefully because if you guys are successful, then MonoGame's successful. So so follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, and don't forget if you want to target consoles, sign up to the various programs, Sony and Xbox and even Nintendo, and then the man to talk to is Tom, and his Twitter is right in the bottom of his handle there. So I'm just going to give you at Tom Spilman. Yeah. You must be the only Tom Spilman in the world.
I'm the only one on Twitter, I guess. I got my Twitter handle really early. Oh no, did you? I'm here still. I'm not gone. I'm still here. You froze. Oh no. I guess it's over.
Did talk about getting MonoGame Extended Guy over. He's in Australia, so that might be a bit tricky, but we'll see what we come up with. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you in a month or so. Take it easy. Thanks, Tom.
Bye. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks.